My name is Pastor Jim Hoggett. We're sitting here at Coeur d'Alene Open Bible Church. We're in my office, and I'm doing some counseling with a couple from the New Testament, referred to my office through Paul the Apostle. We have Priscilla and Aquila, and today we're going to talk about intimacy, how to have intimacy in marriage. If you think about intimacy, take the word and break it down. A good way to describe it is intimacy. Intimacy, intimacy. So let's talk about meeting someone for the first time. It begins on a journey. You meet somebody and say, "Hi, who are you?" "Well, I'm so-and-so, and where are you?" And so what do you do for a living? "I do this." "And what kind of music do you like?" So I share a leg, and they share a leg, and then I share a leg, and they share a leg, as we're spiraling in towards this thing called intimacy. And the more you trust another person, the more you share of yourself with the other person, the more intimate you become. Especially when you get to the place that you can share things that you wouldn't share with anybody else. You spiral in towards intimacy. What happens, I think, with most couples is that they share a moment, let's say right there, where she says in real tenderness and trust, and you know, "I want to share something with you. I need to tell you that when I was 16 years old, I did something. I had a baby, and I aborted the baby, and I'm so sorry, and God has forgiven me, and I've forgiven myself, and I want to ask you to forgive me." And in a point of tenderness and trust, he says, "Yes, I forgive you, no problem," and they work through that. 6 months later, they're in the middle of a fight, and he feels like she has more ammunition than he does. So he reaches back and he grabs a hold of this thing and he says, "What kind of a woman would kill her own baby?" And he throws it in her face, and she goes, "Whoa," and she backs up and she puts up a block wall, and she said, "I told you that information in trust and sweet love, and you used it against me." So she puts up a block wall and never gets past it. Most of the couples that I know that are married have set up a block wall, and they have stopped the road towards intimacy. Sometimes you need to go back and take care of that thing, whatever it is that caused the block wall, and sometimes you may need some help. Sometimes you need to maybe go see a counselor. Marriage is a process in growth. In fact, when I do a wedding, I often tell them that we're giving birth today to a little baby that's never been alive before. Call it the marriage, as if it's a child. And you have to nurture it. You have to take it for walks around the block. You got to go out to dinner without the kids. And as you are nurturing this child, it grows and gets more mature and becomes stronger. And hopefully you've been married for a while before the children start coming, because the marriage guy needs to be older than the children. Otherwise you have a child marriage trying to deal with grown children. And if you're a blended family and you have kids that are older, boy, you were like getting on a freight train. So you need to grow in your relationship. And talk a little bit about this growth. Hollywood does a thing with marriage that really upsets me. Hollywood, they do this thing that says, it's just head over heels. I never figured out head over heels. I'm already just head over my heels. But you're head over heels in love with somebody, and you glide down the street on the chance that you meet, and you meet not merely by chance. You forget appointments and you walk in the telephone poles, and it's a wonderful time. I'll never forget my first kiss with Pam. Whoa. You guys know NCIS and Los Angeles? At the beginning, wait a second, you guys don't know about TV. I'll have to explain that later. But on NCIS Los Angeles, they show the Santa Monica Pier, and that's the place where I kissed my wife for the first time. And there have been 5 kisses that have been rated the most passionate in history, and this was number 3. But that joy-popping thing, you can't sustain it. It's too brutal. You walk in the telephone poles and you just can't sustain it. And it begins to slow down and become a more mature, day in, day out kind of thing. Reminds me of what Jesus says, or the Old Testament says about walking with the Lord. They that walk with the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. And I used to think that was backwards, but sometimes in the kingdom of God, you're joy popping at the beginning of it and feeling really good, and then you settle down to a more consistent run and then a consistent day in and day out walk. Well, marriage is the same thing. Hollywood thinks that they're going to go for that joy popping thing all the time. They even sing songs. Karen Carpenter, I've been in, out, trying to get the feeling again. As if somehow they could get to that joy-popping thing and live there. So they'll have one relationship and it begins to settle down to a more mature relationship, and they leave it and go to someplace else so they can get that joy-popping thing. There's nothing more satisfying than to be in a relationship with somebody, and in that relationship you got day in and day out. It's changing his character, but it's becoming deeper. It's coming on a different level, and it's almost as if I'm sitting in the room reading my newspaper and she's doing a crossword puzzle. Maybe we're not saying a word, but there's a thing that is passing between us. A love, there's a bonding that is passing between us. And I think it is possible to never get to the end of understanding who my wife is. We're uncovering things today that we've never known before about each other. And it is wonderful. It's one of the most wonderful things in our lives. I keep thinking about all those people who told us we'd never make it. Living well is the best revenge. Okay, we'll pick this up next week.